Geico presents Our Town, Season 2, a 30-minute podcast produced by Best Bart Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks. Geico, 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance. Now, here's your host, Andy Ockershausen.
This is Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen. And I've known our next guest for close to 50 years. It goes so fast. His name is a household name to anyone who has ever lived in our town for even a few years. His father was a big deal in our town, and our guest was an even bigger name in politics and government. He was a senator, governor, a member of the House of Representatives. I mean, I don't know what he hasn't done. He wasn't born here, but his impact on this state of Virginia and our town was legendary. Welcome, Governor, Senator Felix Allen.
George Allen. Felix was my grandfather's name.
I knew that. I met your grandfather when they came to a game. I'll get into that with you in a minute. And your grandmother.
Yeah.
George, that's incredible. I was wondering, were you a junior, and Janice found you as Felix. I love the name.
Yeah, my father's middle name was Herbert. So
yes, I knew that.
So we have different middle names. So
George H. Allen.
Yep.
Your dad was certainly a legend to our town and what he did for us, and to have you come along. It's just unbelievable, George. The name means so much in Washington. I think that name helped you get elected a couple of times, didn't it?
Yeah, amongst Redskins fans. Cowboy fans would always give me a hard time with it. And fortunately, the Redskins, when my father was there, never had a losing season, and he brought in a winning tradition for the Redskins. And if it weren't for my father going to the Washington Redskins, I would not be in Virginia, to be honest with you.
But you were born in Whittier, and your dad was coaching there?
Yeah, my parents were married in Sioux City, Iowa, and his first head coaching job was at Morningside College. He's originally from Michigan, near Detroit.
I knew that.
And at any rate, I guess during the period my mother was pregnant with me during that period. Then I was dropped in Whittier, and so he was head coach at Whittier College. They have the worst, least fierce name for a team. The Poets. The Fighting Poets. You know, just like pathetic. We're gonna kill you with rhyme. But you know, that team.
But that was Richard Nixon's
Yeah,
school,
Richard Nixon went. He wasn't there at the same time as my father, but that's when they first became acquainted with one another. The other great thing at Whittier is in their conference they played Occidental, and Jack Kemp was a quarterback at Occidental. And, you know, out of the people who motivated me to get involved in politics, the two inspirational people to me were Ronald Reagan and Jack Kemp. And Kemp, coming from the world of football, really was very consistent with my way of looking at a meritocracy. And some of this you reflect on later in life. But growing up in football myself and my father's teams, and they were all very
You were
close.
part of it, the whole team.
And even with the Bears, those are first training camps when my father was an assistant coach with the Bears. And from 2nd to 8th grade, we lived in Illinois. But he's also
George Hallis was there.
Yeah, Papa Bear. And he was a scout. And every Christmas time, we'd be on the road. We knew, to stay at the Brenda Lee Hotel near Chattanooga. Nickajack's Landing had the best firecrackers you could buy, and we'd always be somewhere in the South, somewhere taking Route 41. And at any rate, all those players though were some from Tennessee, some from Southern
Memories,
different races, different religions. None of that mattered. What mattered is, could you help the team win?
That sounds like your dad.
Well, but that's what we should have in our society, a meritocracy.
It should be. You're absolutely. Now, I want to stop you because I don't know whether your mother told me or your father about the fact that he pursued her long distance. She was not living in the U.S., correct?
Correct. They met. My mother's from Tunisia, North Africa.
Correct.
And all the World War II stories are from her and my grandfather being incarcerated by the Nazis, fortunately survived it. And then after the war, she had some friend who lived in Sioux City. And so after the war, she goes to Sioux City and meets my father. And so to court her, he had to go all the way to Tunis, which was still a French protectorate then, and talked to Felix Lombroso and asked her hand. In fact, my mother knew so little of football. My father, as you know, Andy, he's always diagramming plays, and so he's actually at some table with her, and she said he was doing these diagrams, and you had X's and O's and arrows, and all this, and she thought these were somehow love notes that he was doing, but it's really, receivers running.
Love for her, I'm sure.
Love of her, but also for football, just thinking of diagramming plays, and she thought these were some sort of love notes.
The fact that this legendary football coach spent much time in travel to convince her to marry him, and then leave Tunis and go to Sioux City. That's a long way, brother.
Yeah. Sioux City, Iowa. Well, my mother being from Tunis, Tunisia, which is on the Mediterranean.
Gorgeous.
And yeah, it is very beautiful and all of that, but it's not Sioux City, Iowa is about, landlocked in the middle of the country. You do have the Missouri River, but it's not quite the same as the Mediterranean. So, but obviously they were deeply in love.
Yeah, obviously, and he convinced her, and she has told me the story. And then you were born, and with the Bears, you were a ball boy and fooled around with the Bears.
Yep.
When George he ran the defense, and
right.
They won the championship.
Right.
I remember that vividly.
I remember December 29th, 1963. I was freezing on the sidelines against the brick walls. The Bears played at Wrigley Field then. And
Billy Wade was the quarterback.
Yep, Bill Wade from Vanderbilt. He scored 2 touchdowns on quarterback sneaks. They were set up by the defense that had 5 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries in that game, and they won 14-10. And the Giants had a great offense. They had Dale Schaffner, Gifford, Y.A. Tittle, and so forth. But the defense won it, and my father, as defensive coach, got the game ball.
Yeah, that's right. The players all knew. He designed a plan to thwart the dreaded New York Giants.
Yeah. Yeah, we should say dreaded as opposed to other adjectives we use to describe that team.
Obviously, from that experience, the league says this guy's a head coach, and the Rams hired him. And who was the Ram? Dan
Reeves.
Reeves owned the Rams.
Actually, my father was in New Orleans. At Christmas time, we'd be on the road, scouting, and he still had the AFL then started.
How many kids? Just you? We're still
No. We had by then all 4.
All 4.
Me, Greg, Bruce, and Jennifer's the youngest.
Jennifer's the baby.
And she was just a couple years old. But he'd always load us up in our Ford Country Squire, and we'd go scouting. And if you drafted players, you wanted to sign them. Like Gale Sayers, my father signed Sayers and Dick Butkus and all that.
He died recently, did he not, Gale Sayers? Or say he got. He didn't die, but he's diagnosed with some disease that's absolutely fatal, and they can't stop it.
Well,
I just saw that in the paper. That great name.
Well, but the point is the other league, the AFL would want to sign him. So we were down in New Orleans when Dan Reeves called my father, and we were there for the Sugar Bowl. That was on January 1st.
Right.
And called him, asked him to be head coach, and it was just a great New Year's celebration in New Orleans for our whole family and all that. But then Hallis, wanting to be so persnickety, let's say, about contracts, said, "I'm not going to let you. Wouldn't let him go." So then we lived in Deerfield, which was north of the city. It's a different county. And at any rate, so there's this service of process. We kept the lights off at the house while somebody's out in a car smoking a cigarette, but we didn't want to answer the door to accept the legal process. So Hallis takes Papa Bear takes my father to court.
I remember
saying this is
vividly.
A breach of contract, and it's just an understood rule that if any assistant,
he was going up.
Right, if any assistant has a chance to become head coach, you say, "God, we hate to lose you." It was like Sean McVay just left the Redskins to become head coach of the Rams, but you're not going to say, "Hey, you have a contract here, you can't become head coach." So Hallis takes him to court. They have a trial. Hallis wins. But he says, "You can go." And it was a matter of principle to Papa Bear. But my father was always grateful to George Hallis. The first job, because he gave him a job, and he was a tightwad, which is fine, and he hired him to be a scout as well as a coach. And my father had been at Whittier. Then he got 1 year, he was an assistant coach with the Rams under Sid Gilman. And Sid Gilman got fired, so all the assistants get fired. And the first job I remember him having, we lived in Encino, California. I was in first grade, and he worked at a car wash. He was selling golf clubs, doing whatever he could. But I remember going to this car wash, and I just thought this was great. If you think of cars in the late 1950s with all the chrome and very, the colorful pennants and all that. So then George Hallis gave him a job, and we loaded up in a 1951 Ford Victoria. There was 3 of us then, and took Route 66 from Los Angeles
back to Chicago. That's the reverse rate of the old 66 song.
Yeah.
George, that's
but it was a great trip.
You went through.
And it's Illinois is fine, but it's flat. They have really good rich soil, good people.
Yeah, you did
nowhere near as good as Virginia.
Well, then when he became head coach of the Rams, you moved to Palos Verdes. The family.
Right.
And I remember I visited your mother out there many, many years ago, and that was a magnificent place. Palos. That place was great too.
It was a great lot. It's wonderful view of what they call the South Bay in it, and parkland.
And animals too, all kind of deer and everything.
There's peacocks and fox and skunks. So our dogs would always find the skunks.
But you didn't fall in love with Southern California enough to stay there.
No. Well, I ended up, when my father went to the Redskins, I said, I went to UCLA my first year, and they switched coaches there, switched the whole offense. Most of the people who were on scholarship transferred to New Mexico or Pacific or other colleges because they changed the offense.
Who was the head coach at UCLA?
It was Prothro who recruited
Tommy
me.
Prothro.
And then Pepper Rogers, who's still a long-time friend. Yeah, there's still a really good friend, came in, but he didn't run a pro passing offense. It was a
running team?
option type, and we ran the LA Rams offense in my high school, and the same terminology and all of that. And so they said, well, you ought to look at. I was thinking
that was Palos Verdes High.
Yeah, and I got recruited from different places. I almost went to Arizona, but I was thinking of going to Texas A&M or others. And so we moved. The family moves here to Virginia, to Northern Virginia. And they said, you ought to look at colleges around here. So I was thinking of places like Tennessee or North Carolina and so forth. And I really hadn't heard of the University of Virginia because my whole frame of reference was football players.
I got
and
you.
And there weren't many there. They were playing from Tennessee and
Virginia was
like
not
that.
A powerhouse.
Yeah. And so, but I was interested in either getting involved in ranching, architecture, or law. And they said, well, they have a good architecture school, great law school, and all this. And Tim Timerario and
Little Tim.
Yeah, Little Tim tucked me down there, and I just fell in love with the architecture and the history and the Jeffersonian architecture and all this. And to some extent, if you never went to the University of Virginia, if you hadn't been somewhere else, you wouldn't appreciate it as much. As UCLA, everyone thinks it's so glamorous. It's just.
Well, it is.
Well,
it's West Los Angeles. Very glamorous.
I know, but it's all.
There's no tradition.
Yeah, there's a football tradition, and basketball was good. Bill Walton was in that.
But UVA has got a tradition of statesmen.
Yeah, but UVA it's like a college. UCLA, the buildings they're fine, but there's no architecture, and this is not me. The American Institute of Architects said it's the best example of American architecture.
And the law school is world class, too, at UVA.
Yeah, and so I ended up going to law school, but that was a long process. I buckarooed on ranches out west in Nevada, near Winnemucca and Idaho, and realized the only way you can make money in farming or ranching is with volume. You need a lot of cattle. We had 3,800 head of cattle in this ranch in northern Nevada.
But it wasn't enough?
No, they can make money, but to do it, you need a lot of money to have that land and have all that cattle, which I didn't have. Then architecture ended up with too much math to it, so I ended up saying I'm going to focus on law, but they don't have pre-law at the University of Virginia, so I majored in history. Then
wise man.
Well, people who want to get
history's everything, I think.
You're right, Andy. There's so many folks young people. I work with the Young America's Foundation. I'm the Reagan Ranch Presidential Scholar, and they focus.
That's something we're going to get to. That's
people.
Amazing.
And people think, take these political science courses. I said, no, take history. Understand the foundation of our country. Understand mistakes that were made, the principles, the philosophy. You can hire these political consultant buzzards on to do all your tactical stuff. But as a leader, you need to be grounded and a certain philosophy of government, and you get that from studying history.
I bet I tell 50 young people a year the very same thing. What shall I study? Study history. I don't care what else you do. Geography, history. You got to know this.
Oh yeah,
world.
geography is part of it, and the historical illiteracy, the geographical illiteracy of people. If you don't understand history, even in business, if you don't know the difference between Koreans and the Japanese, you'll never make a deal with either country if you just consider them the same. But
they're not the same.
They're definitely not the same, and you learn that and appreciate it from history and knowing
absolutely,
history.
what they've been through. George, that's so important that you did that. I think it's just wonderful. Your career started at UVA. I'm going to get back. I'm going to take a break here and talk to you about where you went from UVA.
Okay.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to Our Town.
This is Our Town. Andy Ockershausen talking to George F. Allen about his career and his titles. The man has done everything possible to get people's attention and done a great job for the United States of America, and particularly for the state of Virginia. But to go from law school back into the human race as it is, how did you get into politics?
Well, it's interesting. I played football on the UVA team, and then in law school I played rugby, and in the summers buckarooed on ranches out west. But I wasn't involved in, I told you, I majored in history. I wasn't in the college Republicans or anything like that, but I loved debating and arguing. Well, when we first had moved out to California, going back on all of this in the context, we moved
in the
out
60s, I guess.
1966. Ronald Reagan got elected governor in 1966. Ronald Reagan would come to the Rams practices and stand there shoulder to shoulder with my father, examining the players and the strategies. And again, growing up in a football family, I said, well, here's a politician who knows what's important.
And a Midwestern guy, too. Right?
Yeah, the Midwestern
Eureka.
guy. I did. Yeah, Eureka College is where Ronald Reagan went. But so I then followed what Ronald Reagan did as governor and really liked it. So when I got to Virginia, I've liked debating and arguing. And at any rate, I get a call this is in late 1975 from Governor Reagan, and asked me to head up Young Virginians for Reagan. And I said, well, Governor, that's a great honor. I know nothing about organized politics. I not in the college Republicans or any of that. I said, I do go around telling everyone what a great job you did as governor of California, and your ideas would be great for America. And he says, well, just keep doing that. And so those of us, so I accepted. And so that's what got me involved. And we were the rebels for Reagan against President Ford. But we won Virginia. He didn't win the nomination, but then,
got him, though, the national stage, though,
right,
going against Jerry Ford.
Right. And I,
another Midwesterner.
Yeah, Michigan. And at any rate, that's what got me involved. And so people eventually asked me to run for office, which I did and lost the first time. And I eventually won and actually held the same seat that Thomas Jefferson had in the House of Delegates.
Wow. But a guy gave you bad advice the first time, too, right? He said, get rid of the boots.
Gosh, Andy, you remember everything. Yeah, that's right. They said, you got to get rid of those big, shiny belt buckles and stop wearing boots. So I bought me a pair of stinking wingtips, and I had ruined my right knee in the alumni football game in the spring and ended up with blood clots and all this. But at any rate, I lost that election. I never wore those stinking shoes again. I gave them to some young men. I'm wearing boots.
They're doing commercials about them now.
Yeah, well, the best advice I ever got was from a guy named George Beard, who was chewing tobacco at the Greene County Fair. He was a delegate from Culpeper. And I said, oh, you're chewing tobacco here in public? Oh, he says, you got to be yourself. There's no better advice I've ever got from anyone, and it's what I tell others. Be yourself. Don't be a phony. Don't try to put on airs.
People take you what you are.
Exactly.
And they don't.
Yeah. It's hard
Hit or
enough to
miss.
do without trying to be a phony.
It's absolutely. But that propelled you into the House of Delegates.
Yep.
And where were you? That was in Richmond, of course.
No, well, that's where the state. But my district was Albemarle County, which is outside of Charlottesville.
Right. A gorgeous place, too.
And Nelson County, which was, remember the show The Waltons? That's Nelson
That's
County.
right.
And then Albemarle is obviously Thomas Jefferson's home. And so I was 9 years in the House of Delegates, and then there was a Snapple.
Were you commuting, or did you move to Richmond?
No, we lived on a log house on a gravel road in the foothills of the Blue Ridge, in between Earlysville and Free Union.
So when you go...
But for the 2 months you're in session, I'd rent a place. Yeah,
just rent a place.
Yeah, just
And you
in a
had
hotel.
been married to a young lady from UVA, correct? Wasn't she a student?
No, well, Susan went to the University of South Carolina.
Uh-oh.
She's a Gamecock.
She got out of the state.
Her parents lived. Her parents actually lived in Northern Virginia for a while. Her father had 20 years in the Marines, with two tours of duty,
then, huh? Right.
2 tours of duty in Vietnam, and they lived out in Crozet, which is western Albemarle. She was actually a student at South Carolina. Her parents liked me. It's about the only girl I ever met whose parents liked me. And at any rate, they got her to fill out an absentee ballot. I won that first election by 25 votes.
Wow.
After the recount. It was 18 at election. That was a fun election, by the way. My father was down campaigning with us. Oh. And I had an old building built in 1814, was my law office, and rented out space. I'd renovated a lot of it myself and so forth. So we're waiting for the results coming in. And the last precincts were in Nelson County, which is rural. They're paper ballot
I know Nelson
counting. And they're waiting. And my father's saying, "What do you do in the Gladstone precinct?" We were waiting for these. I was ahead, but if they voted the normal way, I would end up losing. And he's telling me, "You should have been down there another time." I said, "Well, Dad, I can't be here." "Why didn't you go to Montebello?" I said, "Oh, I was there once. There's 45 people there. It's a trout fish hatchery up there." And so these are the ones who are waiting, these paper ballots. And so the results finally come in. I lost those Democratic voting precincts less than Republicans normally do. We won. And my father said, "Gosh, this is as good as beating Dallas." And I said, "Gosh, that is a big deal to my father." So I'll always remember that election.
To your father, that was the ultimate.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
So
and
at any
did
rate,
your mom help, too? She must have been a great campaigner.
My father loved the competition of campaigning.
Right.
And all this. My mother looked at politics as so demeaning. She would always send me articles about how unscrupulous and unethical. She'd always say, "It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. You know what's right." And she'd send these.
She knew you were right, George.
Well, yeah, she just wanted to make
people like you in politics.
Right, and you also, my mother was one who didn't particularly like it because she had such a low regard. Now, she loved Ronald Reagan. She liked Gerald Ford, Henry Kissinger, and a lot of different folks. But my father's the one who loved the competition. And
he's
politics.
so intense.
Yeah.
But I remember the great story. I remember the great story where Richard Nixon came to the practice when they're getting ready for the Super Bowl or what. But but he had a lot of politicians in his life. Your father did.
Yeah.
They liked George.
Yeah, they did, and he well, I think a lot of leaders like the discipline of football, and you especially definitely, because he played and Ronald Reagan played and Richard Nixon did as well, and then the others in the military. With my wife, when we're going to get hitched, I wanted to make sure she understood what it was like, and for those who serve in the military. And the trauma of that, and it's maybe in law enforcement as well. Family members are hoping for the safety, praying for the safety of their loved ones. And so there's a stress and tension and worry and a tight unit of a family that sticks together. And so the fact that the stories about in those days was reel-to-reel tapes, the way they'd have to communicate with her father in Vietnam and those worries that her mother had and what she went through. I said, well, she's gone through. Our stress was different. Football was obviously different and less consequential.
Stress is
right,
stress.
and that's important because in the world of politics,
Oh.
It's vicious. And, delay of game and crackback blocks and unsportsmanlike conduct are just kind of part of the bump and run of politics. And so, it's become even less easy.
George, you kept getting in deeper and deeper with Susan. I mean, from the House of Delegates to become governor.
And Susan was a great first lady. And she focused on breast
your time in
cancer
Richmond
and
must have
tourism.
been great.
Well, it was. And we accomplished about 95.
A lot of things.
Yeah, the welfare reform, the truth in sentencing, abolition of parole. In Northern Virginia, some of the businesses we got in, the first semiconductor fab out in the Manassas area was Dominion. It's now Micron. I remember the fella from New York who was heading up the IBM side. The other was Toshiba. And he said, 120 years ago, the North and South were fighting here. Now we have the East and West, east of Toshiba, IBM of the West, joined together to make the fastest, smallest semiconductor chips in the world. I thought that's a great historical analogy of advancement and progress with it. And getting Oracle's East Coast campus here, working with Maryland and D.C. on this Woodrow Wilson Bridge.
Oh my God!
I wanted the biggest bridge that we could possibly build, so that it's not obsolete after a few years, and worked with Maryland and D.C. to get that.
I lived
done.
through those years in the Board of Trade because we were very much in favor of that bridge, and we needed it desperately. And you brought them together, and
everyone worked together.
It's just a great thing for our community that they could work together.
Yeah, and that's because
Metro's having the problems now, George, getting
Right.
them all to work together. And yet Northern Virginia would die without Metro. So would Maryland. I mean, it's just such a big part of our town. I would hope that they'll come together and compromise and get that thing redone. I hate to say redone, but it needs a full dress rehearsal to get it ready.
When I was governor, we finally came up with the plans for extending Metro out to Dulles Airport, and where the stops would be, and Wheelie Road, Reston. And then the key factor of all that was have a stop in Loudoun County. And this has been a contentious issue, but Loudoun, ultimately, the leader said, yes, we do want to have it there in Loudoun as well, because I think it'll be good for economic development. And it'll be good also for another avenue for people to get to and from work.
Oh, it's been a godsend for Northern Virginia.
What they have to do, I'm not going to get into this local regional issues, but funding's one thing, management's the other, and they don't need to gold plate everything. You want things to operate efficiently and cleanly and safely.
On time.
And relatively on time. But you're never going to get...
You see that from a historical perspective,
Right.
that you have to have it.
Right.
And you did so much as governor to make that happen. And then I want to find out who... I know you only could do one term. Who talked you into running for the Senate? It just gets worse and worse.
It gets worse and
Poor
worse.
Susan. This is our town. It's Andy Ockershausen. We're talking to George Allen. The man has been everything a man could be in his life. I want to find out what he's going to do next.
Maybe your kids are about to graduate from college or even get their graduate degree. Or you're looking forward to retirement, finally. Don't go another day without getting your legal house in order. This is attorney Mike Collins. Let me show you how to get a basic estate plan in place that will protect you and your loved ones in the years ahead with our trademarked Reservoir Trust. All I ask is 2 hours of your time. Check the mail for your special invitation and register now at MikeCollins.com. I'll even waive the tuition. That's MikeCollins.com.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell everybody about our newest restaurant over off New York Avenue. It's called Ivy City Smokehouse, 1356 Oakey Street Northeast, right next to the Heck Company warehouse. It is terrific, and we have the only seafood smoker in the District of Columbia. So when you go to your grocery stores or your delis, ask for Ivy City products. 202-529-3300 or ivycitysmokehouse.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
This is Andy Ockershausen. This is Our Town. I'm talking to George Allen about his family. One of the things I remember so vividly, George, was your grandmother and grandfather. They were two French. They didn't speak the English like normal. I said, what in the world is this? And your mother introduced me to him, and he sat in the booth a couple of times. And what a delightful heritage for you to have. Your grandfather was in the wine business, was he not?
Yeah, he was a wine importer, and He was a very successful businessman in Tunis, Tunisia. They had other family members who had olive trees, and we'd always have great olive oil sent to us. In fact, Susan bought some olive oil from Trader Joe's or someplace, and it was from Tunisia. And so we used it. I said, gosh, that's the taste I remember as a kid. Because my mother, she'd put in salad and all that, or if you had earache, somehow olive oil in your ears would somehow good too.
Always
oil and
great.
Garlic. Well, she didn't put garlic. Her nickname was Garlic, because she would put a lot of garlic in everything.
Yeah, but she was a great lady.
She was feisty as could be.
But George, your mother would have been proud of you, everything you did, but maybe she could have said in politics, going to the Senate, maybe sticking your neck out a little too far. You've done so much.
Well, she would have said the greatest blessing in my life is Susan and our 3 children.
I'm sure of that.
And that's, I think, for any of your listeners who have children, that's your greatest legacy. And we have 3 great children. Our oldest daughter is going to get married this fall in Albemarle County to a fine young gentleman from Portland, Maine. Forrest is doing great with the Military Officers Association. Our youngest, Brooke, is a rookie at the University of Tennessee.
Wow.
And at Rocky Top, you watched her on TV this morning. They had the world's largest human tea.
I saw something on Channel 4 this morning.
Exactly, NBC.
Yeah.
So we got up early to watch, see if we could see
I didn't know
Brooke.
what they were doing.
Well,
There's a big crowd in the stands, though.
the stands there. That stadium holds over 102,000.
I've seen it.
Oh, it's just great. When that band strikes up Rocky Top, if that doesn't stir you up, you're dead.
Janice and I drove by around there. We went to that part of Tennessee, and we'd run over to the river, and I took her around the stadium. It was off football season, where they park the boats and people come by boat.
The
to
volunteer
stadium.
Navy.
I said, Janny.
Hundreds of them on game day.
And 100,000, 110,000 people.
Oh,
they come out of the mountains down there, don't they?
They come, to get out of the Smokies and everywhere else. Yeah, that's just great. We went down to a game that was National College Game Day when they came back and beat Florida.
Oh,
and
my
Susan
God.
and I went to that battle at Bristol, where Tennessee played Virginia Tech, and it was 156,990. It was America.
Motor Speedway, right?
Yeah, and I've been there. I've been the Grand Marshal for the Food City 500. Go through the Dale Earnhardt Gate. It's just great, and it was the largest crowd to see any football game anytime. The halftime show was just great. The Pride of the Southland marching band goes out there. They play Rocky Top, and then, which is great in itself, but then they have Lee Greenwood sing God Bless the USA, choreographed to fireworks going off.
156,000 people.
Yeah, and it was just, and it was on September 9th, September 10th, right before 9/11, and they had an American flag. You had the cards, and so they had an American flag around the entire stadium. And it really was just such
great television show too.
Yeah, I guess it was. We were watching it there, but it
absolutely.
was just America and Americans at their best. The patriotism, the enthusiasm, the Virginia Tech fans, the Tennessee fans. It's just, there was no better place to be in the universe than as far as I was concerned.
We all know the Tech people are a little different, right?
They have, well, I think Tech has
the Hokies.
Well, the Hokies, they have really, as far as football, their fans are fantastic.
And they travel well too.
Oh, they do. That's why it was great to have that at the Bristol Motor Speedway. It's about equidistant from Knoxville and Blacksburg.
And they're fans in both states.
Yeah, and those Tech fans, at Lane Stadium, at the beginning of those games, they're all jumping up and down. Oh, it's just great energy.
You've seen it from the pro side. Now you've seen the college football spirit. It's just unbelievable in the South.
Yes, you're right. You're exactly right, Andy. I'll say there's the NFL, then there's the SEC, and then there's college football. The facilities that they have there at Tennessee, and I know it's the same undoubtedly at Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Ole Miss. Their practice facility, they have an indoor practice facility there that is better than the Redskins. Right next to it's an outdoor one. And obviously 102,000 seat stadium. And the spirit is just fantastic in the SEC.
And it comes back every year, George. No matter win or lose, those fans come back.
Yeah.
They're supporting their team.
Yeah.
But now in your career in the Senate, you got a lot of things done. And I'm sure a lot of things you couldn't get done. But When you were there, was it a Republican majority ever?
It was both. It was,
you had both sides.
It was switching back and forth. When I left, we had a Republican majority. When I left, I guess we didn't. But I was there. I got elected in 2000, and came in 2001, and then soon thereafter we got hit with 9/11, and the country was unified for about a year after that, and then it reverted to the usual factions and so forth. That was
friction.
Yeah,
reverted to
was
the friction.
There's nothing wrong with friction of ideas. I mean, that's the competitiveness.
If you can get some progress out.
Yeah,
of it.
and I was always one. I was able to work on a bipartisan basis on issues that I cared about on technology and jobs and competitiveness. And I ended up being actually working a lot with a fellow named Ron Wyden, a senator Democrat from Oregon.
Right.
If somebody said to me before the election, "You and Ron Wyden are going to team up and really get along," I would have said, "Ron Wyden is a liberal Democrat." But we worked together to keep taxes off internet access. We worked together on the National Nanotechnology Initiative, which is the biggest investment in basic science.
And you got something done.
Yeah, we got things done. And we didn't agree on every issue, but you find somebody on the other side that you can agree on that issue with and then do something. And one of the frustrating things after being governor, where you got a lot done and really made Virginia much more vibrant and prosperous and safer, and freezing college tuition and starting the Prince William campus for George Mason University and so forth. You know, the Senate, I said, God, my goodness, I'd make more decisions in one morning than you make all week in the Senate, and I got blasted.
And you only had 4 years as governor.
Right, and you got to go at a full gallop.
You got to get it done.
You cannot dawdle. You can't wait. And in the Senate, it just moves. I said, I got blasted for this. So it's of record. I said it moves at the pace of a wounded sea slug, and it's just frustrating because you want to. And I say, just make them vote. Make them make a decision. Don't just
tough to get it done. No change though, George. It's still moving like a glacier now.
Yeah, but the way I look at it now,
frustrating to you.
Well, right now you got a Republican president, Republican House, Republican Senate. There's no excuse for not acting and keeping your promises that you made to the people in your state and to the country. Whether it's, I'm not going to get into all the issues.
No, I understand that.
But whether it's tax reform, and I do think the president is doing the regulatory reform, which is good that he can do, not having to deal with the legislative branch.
George,
people
you're a fountain
want
of information because you were there. You saw it all, but you saw it from the state house, this ability to get along, and you saw it from inside the Senate chamber.
Yeah, you're right, Andy. And when I was governor, we got all these really historical changes made with a Democrat-controlled legislature. So every one of these initiatives, I had to get a Democrat member of the House and Senate to be a sponsor of it, along with a Republican. And we still got it done.
You got it done,
and that's why I like to see campaigns that are run on an agenda, not just Republican versus Democrat, red versus blue.
Issues.
Issues. What do you want to get done? Because if you win, then you have this is a mandate from the people. And so, and a lot of folks, you have folks like Joe Manchin, who I like, senator from West Virginia, Democrat. He knows how the folks in West Virginia voted. And so when it gets to energy policy, he's going to be on our side. Same with Heidi Heitkamp, a good Democrat from North Dakota, which is an energy producing state. Now, so you could find those
Speaking
folks.
of energy, because I followed your career after you left the Senate, I know that you stayed in Northern Virginia and you became a good citizen of Northern Virginia and your kids grew up there. But you went into I thought it was in the energy business.
I've done a lot of different things in the private sector, generally focused on energy and technology, and
the future.
And the future, exactly. And the principles I've always talked about reasonable regulations and competitive tax policy, and so forth. I've done that with various companies and associations. I'm working with the National Association of Manufacturers on their competitiveness initiative. Young America's Foundation as Reagan Ranch Presidential Scholar, and using Reagan principles, which are similar to mine, as you might guess, with it. And then also some of the various businesses that are involved in energy and technology. And so I'm enjoying it. And you kind of like the freedom of being outside of government.
You do some traveling, as I recall. Don't you travel the world, a part of the world?
Yeah. Well, with Young America's Foundation, they have these various cruises, and speak on the cruises. Oh, yeah. They want to hear Susan's written a book, The Remarkable Ronald Reagan, a children's book, which is really popular. And then various folks in South Korea have asked me to come there a few times, been to China, been to various places in Europe and so forth. So some is business related, some is related to the Young Americas Foundation.
Right.
But we're still traveling.
You give them a lot, George.
Heck, I was speaking at a conference on passive optical networks. This is using fiber rather than copper Ethernet. It uses 10% of the space, half the energy, and is future with the enormous bandwidth of fiber compared to copper.
Sure.
And I was in Nashville giving a speech at a conference on health technology there at the Opryland Hotel.
I know you're doing so much, and from your background and your experience, I mean, you've got so much to offer. That's why they ask you out, because you bring Susan, of course. Now, we haven't discussed it, nor is it the most important thing in talking to you is not the Redskins. Everybody in the world will want to talk to you about that, but we know about that. We lived with them for years, as you know, and not as long as you have, but almost. In 1971, I remember Episcopal High School watching the first practice over there. How about that? That was when your dad first got here.
He must have thought Episcopal High School was so great that he built Redskins Park. I'm being sarcastic, which was a novel idea in those days.
Oh, absolutely. That was way ahead of anybody.
Yeah.
Because he had said something, but he was with the Rams. They came and he had to practice in a dirt field by the jailhouse. And he told me that
We're
story.
in D.C.?
In D.C. He said, if we ever come here again, he said, we're not going to practice in this place. It's terrible.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago. But, George, it's just so exciting what has happened to our town because of George Allen, because he came here with Edward Bennett Williams at the time, and they turned this town around.
And Jack Ken Cook, who was actually a very good he was the owner of the team.
Absolutely. He was a caretaker.
He was a president of it, but because Jack Ken Cook was out in California, he owned the Kings and the Lakers and the Fabulous Forum at the time.
He built it.
Right, he built it. And at any rate, the connection was with Jack Ken Cook, who were really good friends, even when my father, before he came to the Redskins. And so they had that good relationship.
And one of the things I remember about Cook that people probably forgot is he was a real Renaissance man. He was something to everybody, right?
Well,
he worked at it.
He was, gosh, his diction, his knowledge. He's one of these Horatio Alger type stories. He's originally from Canada. He was selling, I think, encyclopedias. And then he started
Britannicas too.
Yeah, Encyclopedia Britannica. Well, if you're out of Canada, you got to have something related to the monarchy. And then he got into the cable business really, really early, and that's where he made most of his money. And
Big bucks.
He was a lion of a man. I remember I went to his funeral, and I remember Jerry Jones went to that funeral. And I was governor at the time, and I said, "Oh, Mr. Jones, it's really nice of you to come here, the owner of the Cowboys." And through the years, Jerry Jones has been a good friend. He even did a fundraiser for me at his house in outside of Dallas. The funny thing on Jerry Jones, he has a pool table, and instead of stripes and solids, he has the Cowboys a star, and the others is the Redskins logo, and the 8-ball is a zebra on it. And so he's a great guy, and his family is. But that's another tangent.
We're talking about it.
But I still think Kenny Houston's tackle of Walt Garrison was the best
greatest?
ever. That was just fantastic.
Right at the end zone.
Yep.
The one of the great memorable moments. It was a sad time for your family, but your dad. I happened to be in Southern California and found out about the funeral was going to be down in, was it in Rolling Hills or in Palo Verde?
Yeah, Rolling Hills.
And I went down to the funeral, and one of the great tributes made, the guys all showed up. It was like a reunion of all his players, and it was great. And I remember the man that sang The Wind Beneath Our Wings.
Yeah.
And that was such a memorable moment for everybody. For George, a lot of people love George.
Yeah, every time I hear that song, and in fact, you even bring it up, chokes me up right now.
That's it.
And those guys coming back.
You remember all that day, the beautiful day.
Yeah, well, I had to speak, and all of us kids did. And
right.
Deacon Jones is, I call him the oldest brother and big brother and all of that.
I know that.
And they put a football in the casket with my father. So that's I
George
don't want to
would've
get
loved it.
emotional. Oh yeah, you're right. You would have loved it. You would have loved it. Yeah. Well, you
those
just
things
hope
are
and
so
pray
important,
that
the way the players came
Yeah.
back and the people stood with him and all the great things he did. For you followed that legacy, you got a great name, but you didn't. You listed the Herbert. You left that out, right?
Well, I had no control over what my name would be, much less where I was born. But no,
Felix is a
it's-
great name because it honors your grandfather.
Yeah, it does. As a kid, I didn't like it. Between Georgie Porgy and Felix the cat, now you're older and you appreciate all of that.
Now,
So,
and your siblings are fine. I saw them all at a game last year or the year before.
yeah,
Jennifer was here, and
Yeah,
Greg, and of course Bruce, and you. And it must have been a playoff game. The whole family was in, and it was great to see them all again. And so many great memories about your mom, and you had a great life, George. You've done a great job as an American.
well, I have good bloodlines, wonderful parents, and a lot of good friends. And some of the things I learned from my father, whether assembling a cabinet, he'd always say that I don't want to have to coach the coaches. So I wanted cabinet members as governor who knew more than they knew what we needed to do, but they knew more about that specific area of transportation or natural resources or commerce and trade. And
Sat in that chair, said the same thing to me. I always try to hire people smarter than me.
yeah, you
So
want to.
wonderful.
You don't want to have to, because I remember my father said, I don't want to have to be coaching the coaches. And you want to have, you're a stronger team if you have people who have their own strengths. And at any rate, you learn a lot from sports and from football. You get knocked down, you get back up. I have my father's posters on my wall on consistency and keep fighting. And you do have to have that fighting spirit. And you don't brood over mistakes. You learn from them, you get back up, and you keep fighting.
Well, we had a sports guy that worked for us. You might remember his name, Ken Beatrice.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
He and your father would go round and round on it. But it was so great that your dad actually did a coach's show with us, one of the first ones in the country, and he got along with Ken. I think he got along with everybody.
You know, Ken Beatrice was really, really special. And my father would get along with my father would appreciate sports people who were knowledgeable.
Yeah, and worked at it.
Yeah,
You know,
and actually knew what they were talking about.
Ken worked 12
Oh,
to 18
God.
hours a day, every day.
Oh, yeah.
He drove us crazy. But he worked.
Oh, yeah.
And your father admired that. He knew
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
That
One
was
of the
great.
best.
Well, George, good luck to you and everything you're doing, and we're so proud of you. And I'm glad you're in Northern Virginia, and you're still part of our town. You know, we consider Mount Vernon and everything out that way. Quantico's our town too. The Marines.
You're
are
just
our
taking
town.
it all. You might as well get some of West Virginia too. You
Berkeley.
take Harper, get Harper's Ferry too.
Well, they used to have gambling, the only one they have. Now everybody's got gambling,
Yeah.
so we can't do
Yeah,
it.
we're not going to get into that.
UVA will never have it, right?
Virginia?
I don't think so.
Well, we'll see.
Uh-oh.
I don't think it's as novel. That location at our harbor, National Harbor, what a great location. If you're gonna, I wasn't one who advocated it, but what a great location.
MGM. Is that incredible? On
Yeah,
that
but it's
side
a
of the
great
river?
location for DC,
And
and it's
Virginia.
easy across the river. To cross the Woodrow Wilson Bridge there.
That you worked on.
However, people should go to Old Town Alexandria for historical
History,
the
absolutely.
historical place.
George,
If they have any
Felix,
money
Alan,
after they were at MGM.
you're a great American and a great friend, and I thank you. And I would like to get this, at the end of this football season, maybe next year, to get your brother, because he's the one that came after you for me, if you remember.
I don't know how
Bruce-
it all went.
Bruce would
Julia's
help me.
going after all of them.
But Bruce
Well-
is so happy to be back on WMAL.
No, Bruce is happy to be back on, and I think all the Redskin fans are because of the strong signal. Because
And the chemistry is there. It's history.
well, it's history. The main thing the fans care about: can I hear?
Yeah.
Can I hear?
Can I
Sonny
hear it
and
in my
Larry
car?
and
Right.
Chris Cooley,
Yeah.
and so forth, broadcasting the game. But Andy, you're a genuine hero of this community, and thank you for what you've done to inspire and motivate people, put a cheer in their heart, a smile in their eyes. And you really are a treasure for the D.C. area, for Northern Virginia. Maryland, West Virginia, and heck, anybody in the world that knows you, they'll say,
my wife made me. She's the one that came up with our town, and we have almost 100 people now recorded. They all be there.
That's great.
You'll be invited to a special kickoff, and what we're going to do for our town is legendary. And thank you so much, George Allen.
Thank you, Andy.
Give my love to Susan, and we'll pass yours on to the Jorgensens when we see them.
Yes, say hi to Sonny and them. They spend time in Florida. Where we live is not too far from where they lived.
I knew that,
in the Mount Vernon area. Boy, the price of that property there is really high. He had a good piece of property.
You got that. I remember your dad saw it and loved it. He wanted something just like it.
And if there's a charity, somebody said on a charity, what's my favorite charity? It is the Washington Redskins Charitable Foundation. They do a lot of good things. I don't know when this will be airing, but they'll have something on draft day.
We'll keep you up to date.
Go to Redskins.
We will.
Whatever
we can do, we'll do for charity, George.
Well, they're good for young people in a lot of our schools.
Absolutely.
And help. Susan and our kids have all helped out on the Fear to Freedom for women who have been assaulted. And when
abused.
they go through that, it's a kit that is put together to help them because of the gathering of evidence and so forth. It's a traumatic time. And the Redskins Charitable Foundation and the players actually helped put these kits together. Rosemary Tribble, who is the First Lady of Christopher Newport University, who herself was a victim of a assault, let's just say, put this together. And it's great for the awareness of sexual abuse and assault for the players, and the players participating and putting together these kits as an example. And they have fashion
It's a joint
shows.
effort. It'll have great effect, that would help.
So the Redskins Charitable Foundation is really a good one with a lot of events, from fashion shows to runs to golf tournaments that help out.
Dan has really tried. I know that. He's really pushed that.
It's helped in a lot of the schools, particularly in the D.C. area.
Our town, George.
In our town.
Thank you so much. This has been Andy Ockershausen. We've had a wonderful conversation with the Governor, Senator, Congressman, dear friend George Allen.
You've been listening to Our Town, Season 2, presented by Geico, our hometown favorite, with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. Drop us a line with your comments or suggestions. See us on Facebook or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to Ken Hunter, our technical director, and WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcast. And thanks to Geico. 15 minutes can save you 15% or more on car insurance.